Hello there. Thank you very much for taking your time to watch this, and I promise you today you will get something out of it. So stick with us, and let's see what we can do to help unlock some potential. I'm David Archibald, and today we have Derek Grundy on Unlock Potential, and Derek is the COO of Huali Manufacturing Industrial Company in the Nike division. And he's bouncing between the north of Vietnam, Boston, Massachusetts, and Ho Chi Minh City. And so I wanted to pick his brain. He has, a unique skill set because he has to lead around 50,000 employees. And so I thought I had it bad with a couple hundred. 50,000 is a whole new element. So Derek, you've had a pretty remarkable career in the footwear industry, over 20 years. What got you into this field of footwear, and what keeps you motivated in it?
Yeah, thank you, David, and it's great to be here. I love what you're doing with with the Masters, and then also the podcast.
Thanks, man.
It's my honor to be here. So, yeah, I'll back up and kind of let you know how I got into the industry. So, like you, I'm also from the U.S. So, grew up in Rhode Island, which is the smallest state in the country. For people that don't know where that is, Rhode Island is in New England. The closest major city would be Boston.
Yeah.
So grew up there. My parents were hardworking. They still are hardworking. Blue collar. My dad was a plumber, still is working as a plumber. My mom was a teacher. But actually what was unique was my dad, at the same time that he was a plumber, he was a professional level marathon runner.
Wow.
So sport was always a huge part of our life. And when my dad in 1980 was in the Olympic trials for the marathon, he was the only blue collar worker that was in the marathon.
Wow.
So he was very inspiring to us. And he was also very inspiring to his brothers and sisters because he was the oldest of 9 children.
Wow. Okay.
So especially his brother, Dan Grundy. Dan followed my dad in terms of the sport of running, which led my uncle to become an early employee of Nike.
Oh, wow. All right.
So he actually dropped out of college to work at Nike retail. And at a very young age, he moved to California to be a tech rep for Nike. And in his mid-20s, he actually moved to Asia to be what was called at that time as an expat, which he didn't even know what that meant. But he did it, and he did that for 25 years. So as a kid, I always saw what my uncle Dan was doing, and I thought, this is really cool. He gets to work for this brand, a brand that I love, a brand that is a big part of sport. And I always thought about, how can I do that someday? Didn't know how, but thought it could be a possibility. Because what was cool was during like Christmas time, Dan would come home for the holidays, and the presents that he would give to all the nieces and nephews were samples from the factory. And he wouldn't wrap anything. He would just dump them on the floor, and we would all run around and grab these samples. So I was young at that time, under 10 years old, 10, 12 years old. And I always thought, hey, maybe this could be an option, but you never know. And continued my journey in sport, but my sport was basketball. Mm-hmm. So my life was really consumed with basketball, high school, into college. Ended up going to college in Beverly, Massachusetts at Endicott, which was a Division III school. Okay. To me at that time, I thought the purpose of college was basketball.
Sure.
I wasn't focused yet on being a student until I had an injury my sophomore year, and it really sidelined me. And I had to think about, hey, what am I really doing here at school? What's the purpose? And I started to focus a lot more on my studies, which was sports management.
Okay.
And then also I started coaching high school basketball. So I stopped playing as a player, which was my identity up until that point. Yeah. And I switched to become a coach. So started to do that. I did a couple projects on different athletic shoe companies. One was Adidas. Mm-hmm. And I thought, hey, this is starting to become more and more real because I'm about to graduate. I need to think about what's next. Went to get my MBA, still at Endicott. Met my now wife, then girlfriend and fiance, Sarah, We both graduated. She became a nurse, and I was still trying to figure out, okay, how do I get into this footwear industry? So my uncle said, I have an opportunity for you. I have some friends who have a startup company called AQX, a very niche product, which was a water shoe, actually like an aqua sock that you can train in, do therapy. It was called deep water running at the time, and they needed like a sales rep just to go everywhere and try to sell this product. So without thinking, I said, I'll take it. I said, what's the pay? He said, well, there isn't any pay. This is going to be all commission. So I had to tell my girlfriend, now wife, hey, I'm going to take this job. I have all these student loans and we're living together now and there's no pay. And she said, are you sure? I said, well, I really want to get in this industry. This is a chance. So first 6 months, working the phones, calling different running shoe stores, different teams, athletic trainers, starting to create a buzz for this company. But actually in 6 months, I had zero sales. No income was coming in. However, then we started to get some traction. I made a connection with many NBA trainers where they started to use the shoe for their athletes, and the shoe was then featured in ESPN, the magazine. So when it was a physical magazine at that time.
I remember.
Right?
Yeah.
So due to the PR buzz, the company started to grow, and the founders said, hey, Derek, we like what you're doing. We like your ambition and the way that you're proactive. Would you like to move to Oregon? Because at that time I was doing sales in my apartment in Boston, kind of just working the phones and emailing. So I said, yeah, let's do it. My wife now, she agreed to go there. And at that time, she's really supporting our family financially for sure. And really supporting my dream. And then went out there. And at a young age, they asked me to run the office. So that was all about picking and packing shoes, organizing the warehouse, trying to deal with the Asia sourcing side, answering the phones, pretending I was all different positions within the company, and really try to grow this startup company.
Wow, yeah, that was a boots on the ground startup.
Yeah, so it was fun. Like, did that for 4 years, was able to live in Oregon. We grew the company. We had another huge feature about our product in the LA Times, which created a big flurry of revenue into the company.
Did you get Tim Grover to get a pair for her?
Yeah, actually we did.
You did, yeah?
Yeah. Did you know that?
Yeah,
we did, yeah. So Tim Grover, he still is big at getting his athletes in the pool to do training and also recovery work.
Interesting.
So he had Dwayne Wade in the pool. At that time. We would text directly, and we would send him the shoes for free, of course. For sure. Because that would help with some buzz in the media and also word of mouth. So a lot of high-level athletes were using this shoe.
Wow, cool.
Very niche, probably before its time,
because
that's before social media was trending the way that it is now. But it allowed me to learn how to work really in all different areas of a company and be hungry to figure out how to make something grow. So unexpectedly, like 4 years into that job, still not making much money for a salary, by the way. My wife was like, where is this going to lead? And I said, hey, thank you for believing in me, staying with me.
Yeah.
I believe this industry is the right place. And 4 years in, Reebok contacted me through LinkedIn. And also that was kind of the early days of LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure.
But they said, hey, we have a job in Boston, near my hometown, which would be a product manager of men's training footwear, which is kind of like product marketing. It's the team who comes up with the ideas, briefs to design, maps out the revenue plan for the year. And you kind of have to be an expert in that particular business unit, kind of act as the CEO of the business unit. And I didn't know anything about that type of position, but because on my resume it said training shoe, because this water shoe was kind of a training shoe. So I'm like, okay, I'll take the interview. Flew me out, and I ended up getting the job. So we took it. We moved back to New England, My wife's also from New England, which is
Yeah.
in Connecticut, and spent 5 years in the Reebok headquarters, which
Okay.
was in the Boston area, and did all different types of jobs within product marketing and management. So that was training, where I was able and fortunate enough to work on the first CrossFit shoe.
Yes, yeah.
And conceive like the whole concept of CrossFit footwear.
Yeah.
And then moved into running, where we created a product called Zig Tech. And then my last stint in HQ, I was in the lifestyle side of the business.
Okay.
But at that time, I started to have an itch for more. I wanted to have a new challenge. So I asked my boss, hey, would you mind if I interview for some jobs in development? How to actually develop the shoes and work with Asia? Because I always thought that was really cool to see how the product gets made, travel more frequently to Asia, see the scale of how things are made. So he said, Derek, we really want to keep you. So to give you your fix, we're going to send you to Vietnam in 2011 for a 4-month training program.
Okay.
So I came out here and I lived in District 1 for 4 months, and I traveled to Dong Nai province every day. And I started to learn about all the different Adidas, in our industry, we say Adidas group factories. And that's because Reebok at the time was owned by Adidas.
That's right.
So the training was put on by Adidas, and started to learn about the business of footwear in Asia. And I learned about this concept that Adidas was doing called Neo, where they put designers and developers inside of the factory to make really fast decisions. And they also work directly with accounts. So they can fly accounts into Vietnam, or the team itself could go to these accounts. So I thought, wow, this is incredible. And that business was making a big difference for Adidas at that time. So when I got back from the training, I actually pitched the concept to the CEO of Reebok. I said, hey, this is something we should do. It's called co-location. Let's put our whole product team in Vietnam. And they said, wow, Derek, yeah, that sounds interesting. But 3 years went by and nothing happened. So it was like early 2014, I got a call from the CEO of Reebok, and he said, hey, remember that concept you were mentioning? We have to do it now, because the Adidas board of directors told us, what's taking you so long?
Yes.
And then the Adidas board asked, do you have anyone who would be ready to do this role? And Matt O'Toole at the time said, yeah, we actually do.
Wow.
Because we have a guy who's been pitching it. So they came to me and said, would you still be interested in leading that concept? And I said, yes. My wife, Sarah, was on board with that because she had visited me in Vietnam in 2011.
Okay.
She had always been on board with that. And by that time, we had our first child. Brendan was 2. So in the middle of 2014, 11 years ago, in April, we moved here. We moved here and we started this concept for Reebok. So it was myself and one designer to start working inside of the factory in Dong Nai. And we started to build the team. And I started to develop an understanding of how to work with different teams across different cultures in a factory setting.
Yeah.
And it was really successful. I was loving that role. I was really enjoying it. I couldn't think of anything better. But then at the end of 2017, I was approached by a friend who said, hey, there's a factory group called Hung Fu. It's now actually called Huali after going public, but at that time it was called Hung Fu. And she said, this group is the second largest footwear manufacturer in the world, Taiwanese owned. They make many brands, about 15 brands. Their most recent brand is Nike, and they're trying to elevate that team. They're looking for a GM, preferably someone who came from the brand side of the industry, but also has an understanding of how to work in Asia.
Yeah.
And she said, would you be interested to speak with them? I said, I never thought of myself as like moving to the factory side of the business, but because it's you, because we're friends, I'll take the meeting. But I said, I'm really happy right now. And then what happened was I met the chairman of Huali Group and his son, Jackie, and they just blew me away. And I thought, wow, this opportunity is incredible and very unique for anyone from the brand, any Westerner to have a chance to lead this business division for this large group.
Yeah.
Overseeing at that time, it would have been 10,000 people.
Wow.
So I went back, I told my wife, I said, you know that job I said I wasn't really going to be interested in? I'm kind of interested now. And I think I'm going to take another meeting. The difficult part will be that the role is based in north of Vietnam, Thanh Hoa province, a very remote area in north central Vietnam. And at that time, my wife and kids were in Ho Chi Minh City. They were settled and established there. But again, my wife, being very supportive of my career, said, hey, I think you should have another chat with them. It sounds exciting. So I had another chat, and they flew me up to the north. I was able to see all their factories. And at the end of 2017, just over 7 years ago, I accepted the role. And it was the most difficult career decision of my life. But now sitting here 7 years later, it was the most rewarding and most impactful thing that I've done in my career.
That's cool.
So I don't regret it.
Yeah.
And like you said in the beginning, we're now a team of 50,000. So we've grown the business significantly over the past several years. And it taught me how to really integrate myself into a different culture and scale up a business. And the concept, that you talk about all the time, which is people has everything to do with that. Without relying on the people that work on my team and empowering them and showing respect to them and spending time with them, there's no way we would have been able to grow.
Yeah.
No one individual can make that kind of impact. So I'm very lucky that my bosses have empowered me, and I've been able to empower a growing team that has had some success to date. Yeah. So that's kind of, it's a longer story of, I always talk about career in terms of a journey, but that's my journey. And, I call it a journey because I think you cannot plan it out. You never know exactly what's going to happen.
For sure.
You try to be consistent. You develop your behaviors and you develop discipline. And the result of that is your reputation.
Yes.
And when you build your reputation and your network of trusted people, they will bring opportunities to you. You actually can't map it out. If you do that, you'll probably be set up for disappointment. But if you do the consistent things, those opportunities will come to you. And every defining moment is the decision-making process. What are you going to do at that time when the opportunity is in front of you? So that's kind of what led me to Huali. Yeah. And I'm sure that there might be other, decisions in front of me someday in the future. But that's how I look at it. Yeah.
There's an analogy I heard one time that says, pretend you're in the car. It's nighttime. You're on a small country road, no lights, and all you have is the headlights in front of you, and that's all you can see. You can't see where you're going yet, but you just keep trusting it. And when opportunity doesn't come up to you and knock on the door when you're chilling in the back room watching TV, you know what I mean? It's like, well, you got to have action. There's got to be action. You got to be doing things. And then you're running and, opportunities moving at the same time. So that's pretty awesome. Did you call Uncle Dan and say, hey, I work kind of for Nike now?
Oh man, he was a big part of the decision. And I consulted him multiple times. And he said, yeah, you should go for this because it's so unique for someone from the brand to be able to take a role like that. And since I've been there for 7 years, I've been mistaken for Dan several times.
Oh, wow.
Everyone thinks he's my brother because my dad's the oldest of 9 kids and Dan's the youngest of 9 kids. Okay. And I still lean on him for advice all the time. That's cool. But I think having Dan as a family member, it helped my onboarding process with my customer, which is Nike, because a lot of the people, they were familiar with Dan and his reputation.
At what point did you see yourself transition from, a guy working for a company to being a leader in a company?
Oh, that's a great point. When I reflect on my career, I think about that and think about how fortunate I was to get the role in Vietnam. Because once that happened, that inflection point happened. Because when you're in Asia, your scope becomes much bigger. So there's no way you can do all the work on your own. So at that time, I went from managing a team of 5 people in Boston to now managing a team of 5 people in Vietnam. But also I'm inside of the factory where we had a 100-person development center. And every day when you walk in there, they're looking at you
That's right.
for vision, for priorities, for, hey, what's coming next? So they don't report to you directly, but that's our factory partner. So they're looking for guidance and really leadership from you.
Okay.
So at that point, I think that happened. And I realized, like, hey, my job now is about inspiring people. It's about caring for them, giving them an environment where they feel comfortable to come up with ideas, a place where they want to stay for the long term. And because that happened at that stage of my career, when the Huali opportunity came up, even though it was 10,000 people directly reporting in, I actually thought, I think I can do this because I've already had some experience doing this in Dong Nai province under the Reebok business model. So that's when it happened.
That's really cool. What are some of the essential skills you think you need or you have to do good at to really inspire people? I myself, I know that if I require something, I get different results than if I inspire somebody to do. So what kind of skills does a leader need to work on to be good at inspiring?
So inspiring people, and I think in the Minute with the Masters, we talked about this a little bit. My personal philosophy on leadership always starts with people. I believe all strategic plans should start with people first, for a reason. Because if you don't have the people, how can you really execute? So when I think about these people on my team, I think about utilizing kindness and empathy. Because I think people do not really care what you know until they know that you care.
Exactly.
And once they feel that you really care, the meaning of that is that you're going to take care of them. You're going to create a safe place for them. You're going to empower them. You're going to let them speak and let them provide ideas. So I'm a big Kaizen and lean person. So I believe in management by walking around. And as part of Kaizen, Japanese Kaizen means continuous improvement. So they talk about doing that by going to the place. That's called Gemba. So that means you as a leader, you need to walk around to the places where the business and action is happening. And you need to be visible. And the number one thing that you need to do in that place is show respect for people. Because then they will think, wow, this leader cares about me. And while you're there, what you do, and what I do frequently on a weekly basis, is you ask each individual people along the way of your walk. This could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour, 2 hours, whatever it might be. You ask the people, hey, in your day-to-day work here in this area, production line or bottom workshop, wherever it might be, what do you think we could do in this company to make this better? Is there anything that you think we could do better to make things efficient, more safe? Do you have any ideas? And you need to create an environment where they don't fear answering that question. They actually want to provide an answer to that question because they know you care. And that's the culture we're trying to develop within our team.
That's really good, man. I like that a lot. Can you share me an example where you've really helped start an individual that you've been leading, and then how you empowered them and they excelled?
Yeah, sure. So we're lucky because Nike is our number one brand partner, and Nike is the number one, world-class brand in the world
for sure
in terms of rolling out strategic initiatives, especially related to responsible supply chain, how to take care of people. And what they did 2 years ago was Nike, along with various partners, rolled out a program called Women's Leadership Accelerator.
Okay.
So they allowed different factory groups to partake in this program. And we sent 5 different women from our production team into this program. 5 different people from 3 different facilities, so 15 in total. And they went through this program. And these are production line leaders, do not speak English. But I made it a point to really get involved in this program because reflecting on my past, I didn't talk about this part of my past, but when I was a kid, my mom's mom, my grandmother, was a production line worker at Hasbro toys in the US.
Yeah.
So she was making wrestling figures.
Stretch Armstrong?
Yeah. G.I. Joe figures
cool.
and starting lineup figures. And she changed the trajectory of our entire family because she worked so hard that she was able to put my mom through college. So my mom was the first one in the family to ever go to college. And then my mom started that trend for the next generation, meaning myself and my siblings. So I was able to tell that story to all the women's leaders that were in our organization that were going through that program. And we spent a lot of time together, learning about what they were learning from the program, how they were going to use that information to make their life better, their workplace better. And we had some of the team members really break down and say, I never thought I would work for a company where this would happen. I said, what do you mean? And we had translators. I used a little bit of Vietnamese.
Yeah.
They said, I didn't know I would be able to have access to leadership and that leadership would care about me like this. And this is a place I want to be. And I want to teach my team what I'm learning from this program. So it showed me, like, even though it wasn't an extreme amount of time that I had to put into this, when you spend time with people and show them that you really care, it makes a huge difference. And then they pass it on. Yeah. They pass it on. So we're going to continue to proliferate that particular program.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So I can see how that really can help incorporate mentorship into that process. And, do you have any specific mentoring that you're doing directly with people, or like these ladies now, they've come back from this program and now they're implementing mentorship? Yeah.
So part of the follow-up from that program is those women leaders, they are now proliferating that throughout the organization, and they are becoming the real life role models to show others that, hey, I can also have this type of opportunity. So that's happening. I think informally, I do mentor a lot of the team members, whether that's Taiwanese or Chinese expats on my team, but also Vietnamese. And then what I've been a big fan of lately in the last few years is reverse mentoring, where as a leader, you actually select some high potential up and coming talent and you spend time with them and you learn from them. Okay. So I'm doing that and some of my teammates are doing that. And the reason we're doing that is we don't know about that generation as much as that generation knows about themselves, including their ability to work with digital acceleration, AI, just how fast they can move with technology. So we need to rely on them to elevate that part of the business. Yeah, that's cool. So that generation is really teaching me a lot.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. I have something similar I call the transformation table, where I have a few people that I can see that, hey, there's some leadership potential in them. And then rather than me sit there and talk the whole time, I give them a book to read. We go through the chapters, and then they have to present it back to me, but I like that part where you're going in, let's say, a Gen Z and saying, hey, teach me how to do this, man. That's
the
really
other
cool.
thing we do frequently and purposefully, and it's part of our strategic plan, is based on localization. So I still have about 100 expats on my team that work in North Vietnam, Taiwanese and Chinese expats. But we have a lot of interaction with Nike, a lot of opportunities to present to Nike. So nowadays we make sure we give those opportunities to local staff, younger staff, and we help prepare them and coach them and help them get through their fear of public speaking. And we let them present to Nike because this is Vietnam. This is their country. They're the future of this country. We need to prepare them now because they're going to be the leaders in this country later. And our customer, in this case, Nike, they also love that, right? Because they see, hey, we're not just putting the expat in every time to present. We're training the next generation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, in leadership, helping your team be more resilient, right? I see that in such a, not only fast-paced, but competitive environment that you're working with, and then how Nike is the forefront pretty much in almost anything with athletic footwear. Do you have any tips on how to build resiliency in your team as through a leader's eyes?
Yeah, I think, COVID taught us a lot. So we were able to battle through that and then end up, coming out even better than we were beforehand. So our boss at the time said, hey, don't waste this crisis. What can you learn from it? How can you use this time to improve yourself, to become more efficient, to figure out how to do things more strategically? And I think that COVID period, it really elevated us coming out of that. And for me, it just made me realize how important adaptability is, ability to change, understanding that the only constant is change. So you should not complain about changes. You should embrace the changes, but challenge yourself how to get through them. And I think there's an aspect of mental toughness that's part of this.
Yes.
And there's a good book I just finished, which is one of the HBR best reads on mental toughness. And it's almost all about resilience. And it talks about how you can train yourself on being mentally tough. And a lot of it comes from experiences that you've had that you can put in your mind, like, hey, I have this challenge in front of me, but I remember when I got through this one that was tough. So I can also get through this one. And it puts you in a nice state of mind to battle through these things. And understand that these challenges and these issues, they're never going to go away. We're here as leaders to help everybody solve the problem. And coach them and be there for the team to get through these things. So the word resilience, it's actually in our strategy.
For sure.
We have 3 R's. It's responsive, resilient, and responsible.
Wow,
so it's one of the top 3.
That's awesome. How do you keep people motivated in your line, especially like when we had COVID lockdowns? And this is a big deal for you guys. With so many staff in the manufacturing field, I remember, there was a lot of strict rules, and everyone was worried about these factories were gonna, spread the disease. And how did you keep people motivated in that time?
3 things. Communicate.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what it is, because you don't want to go into hiding. You want to be visible, and you want to share what you know in real time. So we had to continue to communicate, whether that was good news or not so good news, because we had to do workforce reductions during that time. And we also talked about, hey, you've been loyal to this company. In Thanh Hoa province, we're the number 1 employer. We employ over 100,000 workers in Thanh Hoa province within our group.
Wow.
So we had to send the correct messaging that we care for your community. This is a long-term play for us. And when that business comes back, we're going to be calling you back, and you're going to come back into our company if you'd like. And I think people appreciated the openness rather than just being quiet during that time. And it taught us further that, communication, internal and external communication, needs to be a key focus.
For sure.
And the wording is extremely important.
Correct. And setting that tone, however it's going to be, that's super important. Now you've worked obviously, like myself, U.S., then you come to Asia. what are some of the big cultural aspects that you've had to change the way you are, what you do every day at work to fit more of the culture here?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think due to the scope of the job and when I was in the US, it was an earlier part of my career where it was more about me and trying to show my value and show the wins that I can bring to the table and how I can help grow these businesses. And then when I moved to Asia, due to the scope of the job and the actual R&R of the job, it became about the people. But when I joined Huali, a Taiwanese company, as a Westerner, I felt like I had to learn again because I had to learn a new company culture and culture of people. And it took some time to gain the trust and integrate myself into that. And it took longer than I thought, probably like over 2 years. But now the bond is very strong. The trust is really strong. So even though the scope has grown, I feel like the day-to-day, the job itself gets easier because the trust keeps getting stronger. So our chairman, a couple years ago, gave some feedback to me, which I'll never forget. And it was the best compliment that I've heard. And I try to pass it on and share this to people when they ask about coming into Asia as a Westerner. What can I do? The chairman in Chinese used a phrase called "jie shi." This, and I think you can look up the Chinese characters, but it means, Derek, you are the person who knows how to be close to the ground, near the people, and not fly around too high. Because a lot of Westerners or expats in general come into Asia. They feel like, hey, I'm from the brand. I was in a leadership position. I'm all about strategy. I know best because I came from the HQ. And what happens is, in some of the failures is due to lack of awareness and lack of understanding how important it is to grab the heart of the people. It's like the concept of managers have a title, but leaders have the people. So how can you come to Asia and get the heart of the people? You need to spend time with them. You need to listen to them. You need to help them solve problems. And doing those things, I think, have helped me a lot to succeed in Asia. And I had to shift that, like move the pendulum way to that side. And it changed the way I, spend my day-to-day job.
That's similar for me. I had to completely change. I wish I recorded my very first meeting because my vocabulary was probably way up. I had to get down next to the people really to communicate better. Yeah, that's really good stuff. How do you see leadership evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? Like, how do you see how this is, maybe everything's moving so fast now, but leadership, do you see it evolving much?
I think it's evolving. Like we talked about resilience, we talked about change. Things are moving faster than ever. We need to, as leaders, understand the next generation, what their expectations are of a career. What do they value in their day-to-day life as someone in the workforce? And then, because things are moving so fast, we need to also learn ourselves about that, or, the whole concept of change or die. We need to move quickly. And, the industry that we're in, where things are moving really fast, are around digital investments, automation, AI, reading data real time and using it as a tool to really make decisions, not just getting a whole bunch of data and saying, oh, this is great, but you need to make moves with that to become more efficient. Because in the world that we're in today, for many different reasons, not just tariffs, but the many different reasons, costs are rising. So efficiency in the manufacturing business is paramount, and it can create your organization to have a competitive advantage if you get ahead of the curve. So you don't want to be slow there. But you need to also find the talent and listen to the right talent on how to get there.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things, like as a leader, that I'm thinking about where we need to accelerate ourselves.
I had Matthew Weber, and you might know Matthew from Hanoi. And
Oh, yeah.
He was here, and I talked to him a little bit, and we talked that as a leader, for us, we're Gen X's, and we're trying to lead millennials and Gen Z's, but we're not really dropping down to, let's say, a Gen Z and saying, how do you think I should talk to you, or get any feedback, right? We're just giving, but we're not asking for any feedback on it. And in communication and style, and I don't know, maybe every generation just feels like, hey, this is better than you guys do it. We always have that. But it was interesting when Matthew brought that up. It's like, I didn't think about that. Like, we need to probably start talking to them a little bit on how they would listen and the better ways to actually talk to them about that. Okay, I'm going to change gears on you a little bit.
Go for it.
All right. So you have two boys, 13 and 8 years old. 20 years from now, they find this video, all right, and they want to see their dad, or maybe it's even your Brennan's kids, so someday, right?
Yeah.
What would you like to tell them, how they could unlock the potential maybe they have in themselves?
Yeah. Wow, it's deep. And it's so meaningful, because my family is everything, and my wife and kids are everything to me. So when I talk to my boys, I also think about my parents, my dad, how he raised us. And we were so lucky the way that my parents raised us. And my dad was also like a natural coach in running, also an athlete. And then I became a coach. So I usually approach things like through the lens of sports and want to motivate these guys. And the thing that I always tell them in sport, which I think is applicable to life, is number one, be a good teammate. Be a good teammate. Be respectful to your coaches. Be kind to your teammates, and they're going to help you. They're going to also feel that and do the same thing for you. And then while you're doing these things, whether that's sports or learning or life, don't take everything so serious. Enjoy the moment and have fun. So I always tell them, like when they were living in Ho Chi Minh City, when I was also in Ho Chi Minh City at that time, I would bring them to school every day and drop them off and say, guys, 2 things today. Be nice to everybody and have fun. And follow those rules. If you do those things, I think you're probably going to have a pretty good day. And if you keep doing that, that's going to evolve into your character and who you are. And my dad kind of also displayed that as well. The other one I would talk to them about is just hard work and grit, and not being entitled. Like, I think it's about working for everything. And success, job, career opportunities, making teams, accolades, all that stuff is only a byproduct of hard work, your habits, and your consistency.
That's right.
That's what you can control. That's what you should focus on. So you better get crystal clear on what those values are and what those habits are. And if they're not going in the right direction, correct them. And then if you do those things, the byproduct will be success. But don't try to map it out and say, hey, in 2 years, I want this title, because it's probably not going to happen.
Well,
unless you have the base set.
Your dad just said some incredible stuff there, and you really need to pay attention to that, because we truly have control of 2 things, I feel. It's your attitude and whether or not you decide to work or how hard you work, right? It is your 2 things that you can ultimately control, and I like that. I think that you're spot on to have good friends. You got to be a good friend, right? I mean, it's how it works, and being kind to everyone and respecting everyone. Man, I love it. That's really good stuff. All right, do you have any final advice for maybe someone that's working at your company now? They're pretty low on the chain, of command there. What are some of the things that they can do now that maybe can make them a good leader in the future?
Yeah, that's a great one. Like, I usually summarize this into 3 parts. And I give this advice to new graduates. Focus on 3 things. We talked about kindness a lot. I think kindness is key because people will respond well to you because you're open. You're being nice to them. People are usually able to work with more of a clear head when they enjoy working with the other person. Mm-hmm. So try to do that. Even if you're having a bad day, try to do that. And then the second is develop and build your network. And networking for me is everything. My favorite book is Never Eat Alone, which talks about your net worth is your network.
Okay.
But you need to develop your network in an authentic and genuine way. Networking is not about sharing business cards and asking other people to help you elevate yourself.
That's right.
Networking is always about how can I help the other people.
That's right.
So you meet other people, you think about the discussion with them, and you, in a genuine manner, you think about how can I help this person? And then if you do that consistently, it always comes back to you. Mm-hmm. Karma, in this sense, will always come back to you. But you need to build that network, and it takes time, and it needs to be genuine. Mm-hmm. And the third thing is just ability to adapt. We talked about change and not being in a comfort zone where you think, oh, this is my job. This is going to be my job for a while, because it might not. The whole industry business model might shift in 6 months. And if you're ready, you're going to keep going. If not, maybe you're not going to continue to go forward. So those are like the 3 things. And I'll just share one more bit of advice, which is another recent book that I read, which I love. It's called Give and Take. And this is by Adam Grant. So he talks about 3 different types of people in this world. There's givers, there's takers, and then there's matchers. So I think it's self-explanatory what takers do.
Yes.
They just want everything for themselves. That's and right. They try to leverage, and they might get some short-term wins. They might bully their way into getting things, and they might see some results from that. Matchers think that if they do something for someone else, they're owed a favor.
Okay.
And they're like, hey, remember, I did this for you. You owe me one.
That's right.
You owe me one. And yeah, some people do that, and there's a balance there, and that might work for some. But what I loved from the book is there's research and there's studies from this psychologist, Adam Grant, that over time in life, the most successful people are actually givers. So they give, and they don't expect anything in return. And although it's not their intention, good things come back to them because they've given to so many people that those people remember that. So I would also tell young people that, hey, don't be afraid to help other people.
That's right.
And not ask for something back, but build your reputation that way. Of course, don't get taken advantage of or let people confuse your kindness for weakness.
That's right.
But you also have to be aware of that. But giving, I think, is a great thing, and it goes hand in hand with being kind.
Yeah, man, it's incredible. I really enjoyed talking to you today and hearing what you had to say. There's so many good things in here. I'm blown away. I'm going to implement a couple things that you talked about for sure.
Oh, my pleasure.
In the show notes, I'll link these books that Derek was talking about so you can look them up. And I'm going to read 2 of them that he just suggested today. And I'll put in his LinkedIn link also. You can hit him up on LinkedIn, follow him. He's all over the world and usually somewhere pretty cool. And he shares a lot of good pictures from that. So, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch today. And thanks again. We'll see you next time on Unlock Potential.